Now the cars are on the grid and we'll run through the grid positions for you as a result of the qualifying time set in practice yesterday. On the inside of the front line on the right of the picture, Jim Clark in the Lotus 49, his time 1:27.4, which is 2.5 seconds better than the official record. In the middle of the front line, Graham Hill, also a Lotus 49, 1 minute 28 seconds. On the left-hand side, the leader in the Tasman International Series, this is the 6th of 8 races, the Ferrari 128.2. On the second line, on the inside, Piers Courage, the McLaren Ford, the small car, a great time 128.6. Denny Hulme, the present world champion, a Brabham Ford 128.6. On the third line of the grid, some Australian drivers. Greg Cusack, the Brabham Repco 129.1. Johnny Harvey, a Brabham Repco 129.1 also. And Frank Gardner, who at present holds the lap record, 129.3, a Brabham Alpha. Then on the next line we see the famous name of Jack Brabham. He was the 10th qualifier in 130, had car troubles in his Brabham Repco, and with him the Mexican Pedro Rodriguez in the BRM 129.4. Now, apart from Brabham, those 9 drivers all bettered the previous lap record. On the next line, on the right-hand side on the inside, is Kevin Bartlett, the Brabham Climax 130.5. The Liverpool driver Leo Gagan, the Lotus Repco 130.6. An international driver Rick Atwood, the BRM 130.7. Next line is Max Stewart in the Ren Max 132.9, the 1500cc car. A Costanzo, the Alphen Ford 134.3. The second last line we have 23, B. Page, the Brabham Ford 134.9. Glyn Scott, the Lotus Ford 136.9. I. Ferguson, Lotus Ford 137.5. And finally, the only other starter we're going to see is F. Gibson in the Brabham Climax. They're the only starters. A big field, and what a fine field it is. And as the cars line up on the grid, I'm delighted now to welcome one of our guest commentators today. Many of you saw him interviewing about 1,000 people yesterday. He's the well-known correspondent for the BBC on motor racing. Good afternoon to you, Bill Bryce.
Good afternoon, Norman and viewers, and it's good to be back here again at Warwick Farm. I think just while we're waiting, the siren is gone, where time is running out very rapidly before we see the start of this international 100-mile race. As Norman has said, the 6th in the 8th races, counting towards the Tasman Championship. Well, now, there's been plenty of drama overnight. Chris Amon yesterday afternoon, who's qualified, there he is standing there on the right of the picture talking to the Italian mechanic. They're still working on his car. He's standing down on the grid. This is one of the most remarkable feats, especially from as far as the boys concerned and his team. They rebuilt one engine, the engine that had blown up last week at Surfers Paradise, and changed an engine last night. They've worked for about 36 to 40 hours continuously, and there it is, the red Ferrari has just poked its nose up on the outside of the track, car number 4. And Amon just climbing into it, the Tasman Cup leader at this stage with 27 points to Jimmy Clark's 24. Then we've got another engine change that took place last night was Jack Brabham. Jack Brabham, who had in his car, he's on the, as we told you, well back, he's on the 4th row of the grid, and he had real troubles too with his lightweight Repco Brabham engine, and this they had to change, and they were out doing some practice earlier on this morning at one of the other circuits here in Sydney, and he's on the line good, so to say, but with a time of 1:30, and this is a position that you very, very rarely see Jack Brabham in, on the 4th row of the grid. Well, they're starting to warm them up now, the large crowd down here on the start-finish line. You can see, you get some idea of how the heat is here with the big umbrella being taken away. I think a very notable thing is the two 1600cc cars of Denny Hulme and Piers Courage that are on the 2nd row of the grid, with 1 minute to go now in the International 100. The 6th in the series, a very critical race. I'm sure one of the best we're ever going to see. They're just getting everybody back. Many, many people here today. One of the largest crowds ever, I'm sure. A terrific Italian influence with the Ferrari on the front row of the grid. Amon's ready to go. Looking now alongside of him is Graham Hill. Jimmy Clark, who recorded a 1 minute 27.4. He's just getting things set up. He shouldn't be very long to go. These two very, very powerful Lotus 49 Fords, and there's someone in front of Clark. He's waving them aside to see the starter's flag. The 1.6 litre cars of Courage and Hulme are ready to go. The rest of the field are there. They shouldn't be very long now before we see flag drop. We're waiting for the flag to drop at Warwick Farm. A beautiful day, absolutely terrific. It shouldn't be long now. The seconds are ticking away now. There's about 5 seconds to go now. It shouldn't be long before we see them racing. You'll see the smoke come off the tyres, and there they're racing. And away goes Clark on the inside from Hill. He's poking him out as Bears. Amon's tucked in behind Hill now, so away they go, out through the first of the right-hander. So it's Jimmy Clark showing the way right off the line, right from the start, with Graham Hill buttoning in behind him. Then we've got Amon in the Ferrari. We'll try and pick them up for you. The rest of the field streaming away in single file now as they come down into the dip for the run down Hume Straight.
And running through the numbers as the teams go through, the number 1 is Denny Hulme, number 2 Jack Brabham, number 6 is Jim Clark, number 3 Johnny Harvey, number 4 Chris Amon, and now in quick corner the leader is number 6, and that's Jim Clark. Number 7 is Greg Cusack, number 8 Frank Gardner, 9 is Kevin Bartlett, 10 Leo Gagan, 11 Pedro Rodriguez, 12 Rick Atwood, 17 F Gibson, 18 Piers Courage. They're the main contestants in the 2.5 litre class.
And already the team tactics are starting to play off. Look at Graham Hill there. He's blocking every approach from the red Ferrari of Amon. It's Hill now in second place in car number 5. Clark trying to make the break on the field now. There's definitely team play here as they go through, and we see them heading in. See, look, there's Hill taking a short line, trying to keep the Ferrari back. But it's Jimmy Clark at the stage from Graham Hill as they go into the right-hander for the approaching the Apollo corner. Round they go in a very nice line indeed. They're still running single file. Amon made a bid just a while ago down the main straight. Didn't quite get away from it. But it's Clark now with right in handy to him is Hill. And there's the red Ferrari in behind. It's Courage in behind them now. And there's a run there. And Courage goes past Amon as Amon went wide. So Courage took a very nice tight line, got through on the inside of the corner, and so he has now hit third place in the 1.6 litre McLaren Cosworth Ford. Round he goes through the cutting with the Ferrari in behind. Amon could be just in a little bit of trouble, setting things up, a new engine in the car, but getting it away now as down they go now. It's the 2 Lotus Fords of Jimmy Clark coming down to us in single file now. Someone pulling out for a run down there. It's Graham Hill. This could be still a tactic from Amon. He could be quite happy to be in 4th place at this stage because as Hill is effectively blocking Courage, Amon just might find the gap and go through it. But this we'll have to wait and see. The 5th car at this stage is Denny Hulme. There goes the leader. Under shell, setting up for the corner. There's Courage in car number 18 in the 1.6 litre McLaren. Right in behind is the 2.4 V6 Ferrari. Coming in now, the 2 Lotuses not making much of a break at the stage. Clark maybe just a little in front of on time, but there's pulling up very close to them is this young London driver, 26-year-old Piers Courage, as he had this great duel last week, and there they go out of the causeway, setting up for the right-hander again, swinging out to the outside of the track, chopping the apex of the corner. Coming through now, there you can see him motoring extremely fast indeed. It's the 2.5 litre cars of Jimmy Clark and Graham Hill keeping out this 1.6 litre car, and Amon tucked in behind him there, coming a little wide out of that corner. Jimmy Clark now by about 25 yards in front. Courage making another bid to go through up on the outside. We're waiting for them to come into view, and here they come now down Hume Straight. Look how they're clipping the edge down there as they make the entry through that very fast right-hander that Graham Hill said was very, very important. Here's Amon going down the straight. He's looking for a line past him, can't find it. He's probing all the time. Car number 4 coming in onto the screen. There's Courage there, and there's the Ferrari right in behind him. The leaders swing through. There's the leader, Jimmy Clark, Graham Hill behind him, then Courage, Piers Courage going through car 18. In behind is the Ferrari. There's Denny Hulme, tucking in behind the Ferrari for a tow in his 1.6 litre Brabham Ford. Swinging round in fine style indeed, Jimmy Clark, winner of the 1968 South African Grand Prix. He won 4 World Championship Grand Prix last year, in fine form indeed for the Tasman Series. He's 3 points behind Chris Amon, who's lying in 4th place now on the championship table, as they go in now round into Polo corner. The 2 Lotus 49s are running very well indeed. Here we go now. This is the 3rd and 4th car swinging. There's Amon clipping the edges, but getting on the power, looking in the back of the mirrors there for Denny Hulme, who's right in behind him. Had a very much happier time at practice this time, Denny Hulme. Recorded a very, very fine time yesterday of 1:28.6, the same as Piers Courage. But we see them now, they're setting up once again for the run down the straight. Motoring along down through here at about 130 miles an hour as they approach us. Swinging into our camera point. There's the braking. Jimmy Clark on the braking. Watch the noses dip down as they go onto the braking. Set up for the right hand. A very, very tricky corner. Graham Hill mentioned about 30 miles an hour through Creek Corner.
And the first driver to come into the pits was car number 7, Glenn Cusack, who was into the pits for a few moments, and it was 25-7 stoppage caused by lack of brakes, and the order after 3 in front, car 6, Jim Clark, second car 5, Graham Hill, third car 8, Ian Piers Courage, fourth car 4, Chris Amon, and fifth car 1, Denny Holm. Now we have the clock on Clark here as he comes round on the 4th circuit of the course. The lap record stands at 129.9. We got Clark at 130 exactly in his second lap. As he comes round Polo, the clock's coming up to about 122. He's going to go very close here to setting a new lap record in only the 4th lap. In a practice yesterday, he did 127.4, which was 2.5 seconds better than the record, but looks like this is going to be a fairly slow one, or is there something wrong with the clock? Yes, my clock stopped, so we'll have to get a new stopwatch.
Jimmy Clark, once again, 2.5 litres. You'll see him getting the power on going through the corner, just moving the tail nice in a classic style. So the gap after 3 laps, the time situation was that Clark was 1 second in front of Graham Hill, and Hill is 1.5 seconds in front of Courage. There's the first 3, the time difference between the first 3. And I think that we're staying. There's Amon going down the outside of Hill. There's Clark on the picture. We'll just see who gets into the corner. Just looking for it. Clark getting the tail wagging on there. Through they come. Amon trying to get the acceleration on the V6 Ferrari down through these corners. There's Hill going in. Courage making a bid past him, but Hill keeping him out very well indeed. Those Lotuses are about 40 feet wide when you're trying to get past them like this. Very, very big wide cars, wide wheels on them, and they're filling up the little tight circuit here very much at this stage. Courage making a probe on the corners. You'll see where the 1.6 litre car of his and Denny Holmes can make up quite a bit of ground. There's a bit of braking going on by Denny Holmes right up behind the Ferrari. There's the Ferrari coming through the causeway. Car number 4, Chris Amon. And there's the change. Dipping in on the outside is Courage. He's on the wrong line for the corner. I think Hill might keep him out, but Courage is keeping it in. But Hill, no, there it is. He was, and there's Amon going past him. A mistake by Courage. Tried to have a go on that corner there. Didn't quite make it. And the Ferrari now flashes through into 3rd place. So it is Jimmy Clark, Graham Hill, and there's Amon. And this duel going on. So this is really motor racing. They're motor racing at the toppest of you could ever see anywhere. It's World Championship Grand Prix motor racing definitely here as they go through. There's Clark going over the causeway, Graham Hill, and here he is swinging into view. Coming into the dip now. You'll see the heat rising off the road as they come through. The on-track temperatures today very, very high indeed.
And big news, Bill, Jack Brabham, who started on 10th place on the grid, has now moved up to be 6th. Jack Brabham has moved into 6th place. He just went past Pedro Rodriguez, and he's behind the big 5. And as they stand, we have Clark, Hill, Amon, Courage, and then Holm. And Jack Brabham has moved up, and he's chasing, coming right through from the rear of the grid, and that's great news for Australia, because Jack, who was out on the Oran Park circuit this morning, now has the car moving properly, and he's going to be really in contention.
Well, yes, this is what we want to see, of course, Norman. We want to see this real Grandice going on. It's Jimmy Clark now. I've never seen them so close together. There's 6 cars there, and I guarantee you about 2 seconds covering them all after about 7 laps or so. And there's Greg Cusack back on the circuit. Coming in now, we've got into the picture, is Jack Brabham. Here's one of the BRMs, Pedro Rodriguez, just going over the causeway, quite a way back at the stage. We're just waiting to get the placings. He'd be right in behind Brabham at this point. There he is, the little Mexican driver, number 1 for BRM in 1968, the World Championship. And after 5 laps, the situation is that Jimmy Clark is leading by 1 second. It's 2 seconds behind Graham Hill in 2nd place. There is Chris Amon in the Ferrari. 3 seconds behind him is Piers Courage. Then we have another 3.5 seconds behind Courage is Denny Holm. And then we've got, did have Rodriguez, but he's been passed by Brabham. And here's the change. Here's a change, the two Lotuses coming down into the braking area together, but it's Clark. And look at Amon there, he's sitting up, and there's Brabham going through. Coming in now into the picture, Jack Brabham. There he is, Rodriguez. Now this is not the V12 he's driving.
It's the fuel pumps that we don't get the fuel pressure high enough to get the car running well, you know. Sometimes the car runs well for 10, 15 laps, and then suddenly start missing again. But that's why we cannot really tell in a practice section like this, because you don't have enough laps, you know. Well, it's a little bit heavier and big one, this car, for this track, you know. But we hope to get it running properly, and it can do a very good performance.
And the change in order now, we have number 6 is Jim Clark in front, then Graham Hill in 5. Number 4 is Chris Amon in 3rd place. Number 18 is running 4th, Piers Courage. Then we see that Frank Gardner in car 8 has moved up into 5th place, ahead of car number 1, Denny Hulme. And Jack Brabham has come right through about 5 or 6 drivers to be running next. So the order in car number is 6, 5, 4, 18, 8, 1, 2, with 11 coming next. But here we see the leader, Jim Clark, coming through the causeway. And what great racing that is. There's Graham Hill. Then number 4 is Chris Amon and Piers Courage. And those 4 are making a great race of it out in front.
And there's definitely the front running of Clark, and Graham Hill has set a new lap record. It's Graham Hill who set the lap record of 1 minute 29.1. He's moved up on Clark, and right with him went the Ferrari driver Amon. So they're all very, very close together there now. And it's Pedro Rodriguez, who was driving car 11, who's driving the 2-litre BRM, which Jackie Stewart drove last year. At this type of car, whether it's the identical chassis or not. And there's the go by Courage. He's really pressing Amon at this point, trying to get past him. Improved immensely out of sight through the Tasman Cup Series is the young Londoner, Piers Courage, and going extremely well indeed. But here they come, and they're starting to lap the tail enders now, so this could be very interesting. Jimmy Clark, very, very good through traffic, and here they come right round the outside. Clark had to go the outside. Amon went the short way, and there's the blue flag being waved, keeping the tail enders out. Coming through, 5 is Hill, 6 is Clark. There they are, they're nose to tail. This pressure must break somewhere along the line. They just can't keep the speed up. The placings we've got now is that Jimmy Clark is still in front by 1 second to Graham Hill. Then we've got Chris Amon behind him. Piers Courage is in 4th place. Frank Gardner's moved up to be 5th. Very, very good effort indeed in the 2.5-litre Alpha Brabham. Denny Hulme in the 1.6-litre Repco Brabham Ford. And then we've got Jack Brabham. So there they are. They're all there racing. The only 2 notable ones out of it. We've got Dickie Atwood, who isn't even anywhere near competitive in the V12 BRM. And Pedro Rodriguez, who's a long way back now. So the internationals are really in it. There's no Australian challenge at this point from a resident Australian, which we thought we might see. And there's Gardner using the full power of the 2.5-litre Alpha, trying to get past Courage there for 3rd place to attack, at least 4th place to start attacking Amon, who doesn't seem to be having a very happy time with the car's handling. This could be through to the lack of practice he did. But here it is, they're still hanging on to the leaders at this point. It's still Jimmy Clark in the car that he won 3 World Championship races with last year. And look, they're going into the braking. Once again, a slower driver on the critical part of the course at Creek Corner. Into the right-hander, very, very sharp hairpin corner here. It's number 21, it's Ian Ferguson. Now here we come, we can see him coming through, Jimmy Clark. The slower car keeping out of the way. Hill cuts through the apex of the corner. Where's Amon? He's in there somewhere. We just can't quite pick him up. Coming through. It's quite a mix-up of cars now as they lap in. There's Amon, car number 4, just going through. We're looking now, and there's the little McLaren of Tears Courage. Third in the championship table with 19 points at this stage. Across the causeway, look, he's just having a lovely drive there. You can see him setting it up again. Comes out to the outside, taking a wider line. Amon keeping the gate shut. You'll notice this now that Chris Amon is taking right in through the middle. He wouldn't be taking the line he'd like to be taking, but Courage has got a very, very fast car around this particular part of the circuit. Coming into the pit straight now, you'll see him take a tighter line, see? And there's Amon looking for him again in the mirrors. Gardner's there, but there's the 1.6 litre car getting really up and going at this point. Very, very stable indeed.
I think it should. I think our cars should be capable of getting very close to Jimmy. Whether, in fact, in the race, this will be so or not, remains to be seen. But I think that although he's done a very fast time, that our cars should be anyway. Denny Howell and myself, that is, should be able to run at least second and third behind him.
And we've had news that the first 6 places are separated by only 5 seconds, with Clark 1.5 seconds in front. But the big news too is that Jack Brabham has passed Denny Hulme, and he's now running in either 6th or 5th place. We'll check them as they come round, but car number 2 is moving up to be a real challenger to the minor place getters.
Well, there's a long way to go in the race yet, and there he is, Jack Brabham, one of the most famous motor racing drivers ever. And he got past. There's quite a cloud of dust there. I think that would probably come from Jack, who's starting to use all the circuit. There he is, number 2, in his very characteristic style of getting the tail out on the rough. Very, very disheartening for anyone following behind, but he uses all the track. It's just the way he's driven. And you'll see him get the tail set up. There he is, moving it through the corner very fast, and he's after Frank Gardner. So there was the placings now. Jimmy Clark, Graham Hill in 2nd place. 4th is Chris Amon in the Ferrari. Then we've got 4th place is Piers Courage. Then we've got Frank Gardner just narrowly holding off Jack Brabham, and Denny Hulme, who was Brabham's teammate last year and who won the 1967 World Championship, is back in 7th place. Into the braking area again for Creek. Courage going through, still holding 4th place. Gardner, Brabham. There's Brabham just into the picture now. There he goes now. Car number 1 on the screen now, the 1.6 litre Remco Brabham Ford of Denny Hulme. Had a very bad smash in the New Zealand Grand Prix when he collided with a slower car and wrecked the chassis completely. They flew out another chassis, and he's got the car going now, but hasn't had a very happy Tasman Series at all. Come on fresh from his World Championship victory in 1967.
Power road ratio, I should think we're about the same as Jimmy. He makes up a little bit on the big straight that they have here. Well, not terribly big, but it's a straight. And we gain it on the homeward run, I would think. Coming back through the narrow part of the circuit, I'm sure our car is much more controllable than Jimmy's.
I see through the S's, would you have an advantage?
It's quite a bit. We obviously must have a big, better advantage than what Jimmy's got anyway.
You'd be able to go into corners deeper for braking.
Because we don't have the weight to stop. And we're running the same size tyres, so therefore we must be able to stop that much quicker anyway.
I see. Have you been to Warwick Farm before?
Yes, I came here in 1967, again 1964 I think it was. I was in second position on the group. In 1964, when the clutch gave out, I was about to drop the flag and I stalled it on the line.
To the black.
Well, they're coming over across the north and crossing again. The rest of the field going, and someone's in trouble. We'll just keep this on here. It looks like it could be, just trying to pick it up, it's Denny Hulme. and he's trying to make out to the slower car number 19, who's in front of him. He's waving furiously to Max Stewart to let him over and let Holm continue on through it. The blue flags are being waved quite vigorously by the flag marshals, and that was Denny Holm signalling that he was coming through very fast. So here he comes. He's lying in 7th place at the stage, but the battle is really up front. And there's Brabham settling down into it very nicely, driving extremely well, and he's after Frank Gardner. Now look at this. Watch the tailpipes on the Alpha of Brabham, because they're starting to smoke a little at the stage. Whether it's oil blowing onto them or not, we just can't quite see. A slower car in front. Here's the leader coming into view now, Jimmy Clark. On the braking, you see the car moving a little bit as they go through on the braking area. Clark with his arm up through there, just getting it round through the corner. Hill in behind him. There's the Ferrari. 6 is Jimmy Clark coming through. You'll see him chop the left-hander, set it up for the right-hander. There he goes, right out to the outside and back through it again. Very, very nice. A beautiful entry into the corner so that he can get the maximum power and speed out of them. No doubt about it. One of the finest motor racing drivers ever. Coming in now, you'll see him set the car up. The big Lotus Ford 49 with the 2.5 litre engine there, being waved on by another slower car as he goes to the right side of the corner for the line. Just coming in now, car number 6. A winner right from its first race. This is the car that won the first race ever for the Lotus 49 of Colin Chapman's. It won the Dutch Grand Prix last year for Jimmy Clark and Colin Chapman, and down he goes. Today it's fitted with a 2.5 litre engine, and it seems to be performing very, very smoothly indeed.
Now we have in a position after 14 laps covered out of the 45, which is almost a third of the way through the race. In front, car 6, which is Jim Clark, second, number 5, Graham Hill, then car 4, Chris Amon, 18, Piers Courage, 8, Frank Gardner, 2, Jack Brabham, and 1, Denny Holm. So those 7 cars have opened up a gap of about 12 seconds over the remainder, and running next is car number 11, which is Pedro Rodriguez of Mexico. Number 3 is running next, that's Johnny Harvey. Then we have car number 9, that's Kevin Bartlett, and car number 12, that's Rick Atwood. So the international drivers are all running in the first 11 places. So after the first 7, there's a fairly big gap of about 12 to 15 seconds, and the interest naturally must be in the leading group of 7. We noticed that Jack Brabham, you mentioned the smoke dropping out there, Bill, he fell back a bit away from Frank Gardner in the last lap. He was right on his tail, and now he's dropped back to be about 35 yards behind him as they came down the straight. So Brabham may be in slight trouble.
It's into Polo again for the... There's a great battle going on there. Amon just keeping this car of Courage's out, the 1.6 litre car. Amon in the Ferrari, Courage giving him a real battle for it. There's the B6 2.4 litre Dino Ferrari of Chris Amon.
And we've had news from the pits that car 9, that's Kevin Bartlett, who was challenging Johnny Harvey, car number 3 for the best Australian performer, is in the pits. His car has overheated. That's bad luck for him. He's in the pits now. Also in there is car number 19, Max Stewart. Overheating is quite a possibility today because the temperature here at Warwick Farm is round about 95 degrees.
And Amon's car is definitely not handling well. You might have noticed then coming out of Creek Corner, the tail moved considerably on it. He could be having quite a hard time there, and this 1.6 litre car of Courage's is really looking for the gap past him. Graham Hill has opened up a little bit more of a gap on them as they come through, but Amon still being pressed extremely hard indeed. Just can't use all the power. He hasn't got that much more, I don't think, that at this stage that he can use on the circuit. It could be the tyres giving him a bit of bother. But he's still going on, and there he is moving wide to keep through, cutting across to get the right line, and he's keeping out this 1.6 litre car of Courage. He's got to get a break of a couple of seconds over him to keep safe. so that he can concentrate on the way forward instead of looking behind. There he is, a fine cockpit shot of him as he goes through. Chris Amon, #1 Ferrari driver. Courage right in behind him. Piers Courage out in Australasia to make a name for himself, and this he's done very well indeed with his very fine third place so far in the championship table. Coming in now is Jimmy Clark on braking. Hill in behind him in 5. Amon, here's Courage, looking to put the pressure on Amon. Out of Creek Corner, which could be getting considerably slippery at this point. No, a lot better exit out by the Ferrari that time. He's still got that 15 yards or so over them. Over Courage. There they go, clipping through. Once again, into the left-hander. They'll come out right. That's it to get through this very, very sharp corner, the right-hander.
We've given you some pit information which wasn't quite accurate. I said that Kevin Bartlett was out of the race. Well, Kevin's still there in car 9. It was car number 7, Glenn Cusack, which is withdrawn from the race. Car 7 is out of the race, Glenn Cusack. Bartlett is still out on the track, running now in 9th place.
The position at 16 laps completed of the 45-lap journey is that Jimmy Clark is leading by 2 seconds to Graham Hill, who is 5 seconds in front of Chris Amon. 6 seconds behind him is Piers Courage, and then 8 seconds behind Courage is Frank Gardner.
And it appears there that Jack Brabham has passed Frank Gardner. We see car 2 coming ahead of car 8, so Jack Brabham has moved up into 5th place, and car 8 Gardner has now moved back into 6th place ahead of car 1, which is Denny Hulme. And we did say just a few laps ago that Jack's car didn't appear to be going that well, with a bit of smoke popping up, but now he's made a real recovery. Everything seems to be working all right, and he's going to challenge now on car 18, who's the one in front. That's Piers Courage. Let's see if we can get a margin here between the two. Jack approaching the causeway in front of him, and there's the margin now to Piers Courage in 4th place. Ahead of him, Chris Amon, Graham Hill, and out in front, Jim Clark.
Yes, the race is developing. I can't see where the pattern is at present. It's just that the Lotuses of Graham Hill and Jimmy Clark are not well out in front, but they're keeping out in front. It's Graham Hill who's doing the blocking work for Jimmy Clark. There's no doubt about this. Clark wants those points here, and Graham Hill is a little late. He's only come out to do the 4 Australian races. To get valuable points for him at this stage is quite important.
Now into the straight we see Clark in the foreground, then Hill going over to the left. Behind them is Courage, Brabham's in the straight, and in fact these 7 are still within the distance of Hume Straight. Those 7 cars, 6, 5, 4, 18, 2, 8 and 1, and they've been that all the way.
I noticed that Jim Clark really slows it down coming out of Creek, possibly waiting to get it in a straight line before he gets all the power on track. And these cars can really get up from these slow corners and drag away. They have a lot of power, a lot of torque, and the Ford engine really gets up on its cams, which develop the power, and you can see him really scooted away from there, but he's just a little slow out of Creek. If later on in the race someone is challenging, this could be the place to get him, coming out of Creek Corner. There's the leader, Jimmy Clark, going over the causeway, looking a little unstable at this point. He's moving the car across the circuit quite a bit. He's got a lot of pressure off him at this stage of the race. And there you can see the nose lifting up on the Lotus as it gets this terrific power run down here through into the right-hander for the run down the pit straight. Clipping the edges once again. He's starting to use the road more now. In fact, looking more ragged now in his driving than he did in the earlier laps. It could be that possibly the track is getting a little slippery and he's finding it a little harder for the tyres to counteract with this. Second car is still Graham Hill.
And to give you some idea of the closeness of this race, the first 7 cars are separated by only 10 seconds. Jim Clark about 2 seconds ahead of Graham Hill, a couple of seconds back to Chris Amon, then only a second margin to Piers Courage in car 18, then Jack Brabham in 2, a couple of seconds further back to Frank Gardner, followed by Denny Hulme, who's in 7th place. But coming up to the halfway stage of the race to have only 10 seconds separating 7 cars, I would describe this as one of the best races we've seen here for years.
It's one of the best races you could see anywhere, Norm, I think. I'm sure of this. It's a very interesting battle. There's this great battle going on between Amon and Courage. Courage probing hardly, trying to get through on the corners.
They've just completed 19 laps, so they have 26 laps to go. They'll reach the halfway stage in the middle of the 22nd lap. That's in about 3 laps' time. And this is where the telling pressure comes on, Bill, where the field has settled down, and not really settled down, I'd say, into an absolute order. We can see challenges coming from everywhere, but it's going to be a test of stamina for the cars and driver from here on. And the pressure is right on any one of those drivers in the first 7.
It's a telling pace, all right, Norman, a very, very telling pace. They're going extremely fast. There's Hill going through, and give you some idea that Jimmy Clark has cleared out a little bit. There's Amon right in behind him, he's getting a little bit of a break on Courage's car, I think, at the stage, but Courage hanging on like a leech. He's right in there, following the Ferrari every move. Right, the leader coming down to us now at about 135 to 140 miles an hour. Jimmy Clark onto the braking area. Here's Graham Hill arriving. Filling up the screen now is the Ferrari, and right in behind is the 1.6 litre McLaren. Through they go, the right-hander at Creek Corner. There's Amon, keeping it very nicely, the power on this. At that time it was Courage who was a little bit slower in the exit, but he makes up for it, getting the car rolling along very, very quick indeed. So after 20 laps, the situation is that Jimmy Clark is leading by 3 seconds to Graham Hill, who's 5.5 seconds in front of Chris Amon. Our time difference here states that it's 6.5 seconds to Piers Courage, but that I have to dispute because Courage would be about 2 seconds behind Amon, and then we have behind Jack Brabham about 8 seconds behind Courage. Through they go, the Ferrari, as we told you earlier, a complete engine rebuild. Oh, there's Courage starting to get a little tweaky, trying a little hard. Trying to get it going just that little bit faster through the causeway so that he can get up to the short straight where he accelerates very quickly indeed. But the Ferrari just got the brake on him a bit there. Amon still in 3rd place. Courage in behind. 2.4 litres to 1.6. Both cars going very well indeed. Just going in, there's you can see Graham Hill going out of the picture as the 2nd and 3rd car, or 3rd and 4th cars come through. Graham Hill is still in 2nd place. The leader is Jimmy Clark approaching us now. Car number 6, 5 coming into the screen. On braking is Graham Hill. Look at the difference in lines here. Here's Courage pressing very hard to get past Amon, but Amon there going very well indeed, keeps him out. Courage having a very nice drive. You can see him sneaking the gears as he goes down. Round through this particular part of the course. Jimmy Clark.
We mentioned about 10 laps ago that the first 7 cars were 10 seconds in front of the next car, which was running 8th. That margin has now been increased to 30 seconds. So the first 7 cars are 30 seconds away from the head of the field. The gap between car number 1, which is Denny Hulme, and the next car, which is car number 11, Pedro Rodriguez, approximately 30 seconds. So the top 7 are moving bit by bit away from the remainder of the field, and the order of this particular time is car 6, Jim Clark, car 5, Graham Hill, car 4, Chris Amon, car 18, Piers Courage, car 2, Jack Brabham, car 8, Frank Gardner, and car 1, Denny Hulme. The margin between 1st and 7th, approximately 10 seconds.
Coming through now, there's the Ferrari. Now there's the Remco Brabham of Jack Brabham, who's closed the gap up quite drastically on Piers Courage. So now he's looking at the 1.6 litre car of Courage, and he's starting to move very, very fast indeed. He's making a run at the stage, I would say. Someone really out on the rough down there. Brabham it is coming through. There goes Jimmy Clark, Graham Hill, and there's Brabham going for the run on the inside on braking, but is he going to do it? No, Courage closes him out. You can see the confidence that Brabham's got in the 1.6 litre McLaren driver as he let him come right across in front of him. It was Courage's corner. So now this is where the argument is. We've got Jack Brabham starting to press hard on Courage, and Courage will be putting the pressure onto Amon. But Amon pulling away a bit at this stage. As he goes out of the picture, there's there's Brabham really in the rough. He's lost it nearly. No, he held on to it. Oh, that's really motor racing. He's trying extremely hard. He actually got the rear wheels lifted off the ground. He was in trouble then, Jack Brabham. And as you can see, he slowed back quite considerably. That'll give him a lap or so to get rid of that one. That was quite a nasty one for him. He got those wheels lifted off and it was very, very near it. Trying extremely hard indeed, possibly a little bit too hard at this stage. The track getting a little slippery. Brabham getting the tail out a little wide and getting into the rough and nearly losing it in a big way. First bit of incidents we've actually seen so far on the journey. Coming through now into the right-hander, you can see the pipes of the 2.5 litre Repco engine right up the top, characteristic to the... Coming down through here, we've got the oil and bits of oil and rubber that's on the circuit, and this is the reason why possibly it's getting a little bit slippery. The heat, of course, which keeps it going right through.
And from our clockers, we see that Jack Brabham, who was in 10th place at the end of lap 1, has been lapping about a second better than Piers Courage and been catching him at that rate. Of course, that little mishap there has dropped him back a bit further, but Jack Brabham is lapping very fast indeed, a second better than Courage, but he would be lapping at approximately the same rate, it seems, as the leader, Jim Clark. Brabham started well back on the grid. He was the 10th fastest qualifier, and he's moved now from 10th up to 5th, so he's passed 4 international drivers in front of him. Grid, he was the 10th fastest qualifier, and he's moved now from 10th up to 5th, so he's passed 4 international drivers in front of him.
Yes, he's got through some of the slower cars, and coming in now, sorting out that corner a little better that time, getting the tail. In fact, he's driving a lot deeper now. You'll see him just clip through the edges. He's closed up once again the gap onto the McLaren driver, Courage. The situation is still that Jimmy Clark is still leading, but there's Jack Brabham back in 5th place at this point, and as Norman May has told, and there's Courage's turn to get in the rough there. And there's Jack sort of signalling to something in front. They've done 24 laps, nearly halfway through. So yeah, 45, there's over halfway, 45 lap race, 21 laps to go. Courage, car number 18, and there's Jimmy Clark going through, 6, 5 is Graham Hill. They're getting past the slower car number 22, which is Costanzo. And look at this, there's Brabham using the car right up on its braking. He's right leaving his braking late, coming down Hume Straight. But Courage has just got a little bit too much for him through the corners. But there's Brabham streaking past Costanzo as he goes through. Car number 2. Swinging through, come see them. Courage a little faster over this particular section of the circuit where it gets these changes of direction, but here's a go by Jack Brabham. No, he's out in it again, left his braking right late. He's trying extremely hard. I haven't seen him try like this for a long time. This is one of his hardest efforts, I'm sure, even when he had Chris Amon on his tail in the 1967 British Grand Prix. He had to keep him out then, but this time he's applying the pressure and giving a great lesson, I'm sure, to young Piers Courage in front of him. But Courage is battling along like a veteran at this point, and he's keeping out Jack Brabham. He's obviously in trouble. He's making a pit stop. He's coming into the pits. We'll keep the camera on him in the pits there and see what's going on. There he is. He's calling in. Roy Billington rushes up. Something's wrong with the front of the car. They're moving in now. Brabham sitting in the car. Roy Billington working on it. It's obviously something wrong there with the braking system, though yes, it looks like they're putting oil in the car. It looks like oil going.
Jack, can you tell me what's the matter? I think it appears to be he's running out of oil. They're filling it up with oil. The mechanics are very busy. They haven't even got time to give us a reason why he's in, which is not unusual for the Brabham team, mind you. Anyway, it appears that it's a lack of oil. His oil pressure and his fuel pressure seem all right. I can't see any other good reason. He's been blowing out a hell of a lot of oil. There's oil all between the banks on the V8. Anyway, I'll hand you back now to Norman May.
And reporting in the pits for us was Paddy McNally, the second of our expert commentators, up to the minute news on Jack Brabham. So the order now, car 6 is in front, Jim Clark. Car 5 running second, Graham Hill. Car 4, Chris Amon is third. car 18, Piers Courage, is running in 4th place, and there he is. Then car 8, Frank Gardner, followed by car 1, Denny Holm. And those 6 cars now with Brabham in the pits. He's still there. He's been there now for almost a minute. It would mean that those 6 are 30 to 35 seconds ahead of the next car. And Jack Brabham is going out of the pits again. He would have lost, I'd say, at least a minute in that pit stop, dropping him back to about 10th place.
Yes, this is possibly where one of the reasons where things are getting a little bit slippery is that this, if Jack Brabham had to call for oil, obviously he's getting oil surge on the corners. The oil gauge would be moving across from side to side, denoting to him that it was running short of oil. But there's Jimmy Clark going out of the corner. He's coming into view now. Clark it is, coming in. He's faultless actually with his setting up for the car on the corners. He allows for the slippery conditions, which means a little slower, a little bit more cautious through these very, very tight, deceptive corners. Coming now round into Polo, getting away on acceleration again. You can get some idea that he shoots along this short straight.
And a further pit report, Jack Brabham stopped, as Paddy said, for more oil plus a soft drink. I wouldn't be surprised about that. It's very hot down there. And his pit stop was 100 seconds, 1 minute and 40 seconds, which would put Jack Brabham in an impossible position now, well back in the field. Of course, the only chance he would have if 5 or 6 other drivers all pull out of the race, and that's very, very unlikely, particularly the way Jim Clark's going out there in front with his teammate Graham Hill right behind him. So in car number, it's 6, 5, 4, 18, 8 and 1. And they're the only ones really in contention with this race now, approaching the 2/3 stakes. And there he is, the winner, or the leader, Jim Clark, going out of Creek Corner into the S's with Graham Hill behind him in 2nd place.
Yes, here's Clark. The reliability of the Lotus Ford engine certainly proving itself over the last few Tasman Cup races. Round he goes through there. And he's definitely got a break on Graham Hill at this point. Streaking round towards the causeway, one of the most deceptive parts of the circuit. He's onto the braking now, setting it up, a little bit of power through here at about 70 miles an hour. Swinging away over to the right-hand side, clipping the edge, then back to the left hand to get through this right-hand corner. His entry and exit, there's Hill going through. Follow that, and Amon is starting to press up a bit. Courage has closed up a little more on Amon. There's Graham Hill in the 2nd Team Lotus car.
Interesting thing here, Bill, in the Tasman Championship points, if Clark runs first and Amon second, they would be dead level. But if Graham Hill can keep between them and finishes in the order as they are now, it would mean that Amon has been deposed by Jim Clark after the race as the leader in the Tasman Championship. So Graham Hill, Clark's teammate, is doing the right job by keeping between the 2 drivers.
Yes, this is the tactics I think that the Team Lotus people have got on, because whether Graham Hill gets through, though he'd like to win this, no doubt, but even if he doesn't, the points aren't much to him. But he can keep young Chris Amon from getting these points, which is a very important thing. And Amon needs points at present. He's had 1 engine failure last week at Surface where he didn't score at all, and the Ferrari team have worked considerably hard to get this car set up here for today. Round through they come now. Courage in behind him, and you can see there that he's really driving extremely well. Denny Holm, we've lost him actually. We've had such an interesting duel up in the front end of the race, and with Jack Brabham making his pit stop and everything, it's quite an exciting thing here. But here's the Ferrari, the Dino. You can see it just moving a little bit there, but Amon getting it set up very nicely indeed through the causeway, and there's Hill just in front of him. These two having a fabulous dice.
The official position after 28 laps, Jim Clark was 6 seconds ahead of Graham Hill, only 1 second back to Chris Amon, a further 1 second back to Piers Courage, then 9 seconds back to Denny Holm, who's gone in front of Frank Gardner. 9 seconds back to Denny Holm, who's now 2 seconds in front of Frank Gardner, and Brabham, who was in 5th place before the pit stop, is now back in 10th place in the field.
Right, now I would say at this stage that Chris Amon is starting to apply the pressure. Through he goes. You can see he's closed up now on Graham Hill. He's starting to leave that little bit of a gap back to Courage. The engine's performing obviously okay, so he's starting to go a little bit harder. Here's Clark coming into view, or he's just gone out of picture. And here's the other two arriving now. Now here's Amon going, having a go on the outside. No, not at this stage. Graham Hill right on the brakes that time. As through goes Chris Amon.
We've had further news. Another international driver has pulled out of the race. He's down in the pits. And to get a report, we'll cross down to Paddy McNally.
Well, Richard, you've just come into the pits, I see. What's the problem?
Well, it's stuck in 5th gear going down the straight, and I waited till I got to the pits to try and select another one. It's got 2 gears at once. If I'd done it while I was going along, it would have broken the gearbox. So it's finished anyway.
That's that, as far as you're concerned.
Well, it'd take too long to do.
I see. We better pass us back to Norman May, who'll tell us how the race is progressing. Thank you very much indeed, Richard.
Okay.
And here's Bill Bryce with the news on what's happening. Jim Clark's still there, but where's Chris Amon in relation to Graham Hill? And that's the important part of the race now. We see car 5, and that's Chris Amon right behind him.
Yes, it's Graham Hill, but it's quite a gap. He's got away a wee bit there onto Amon, but Amon was starting to make a pro. But this is a very, very difficult part of it, of course, when you start to apply the pressure, especially to a driver of the calibre of Graham Hill, who is really born under pressure, because this is where he's always is. He's always in the pressure spot, and he knows how to handle it. He just takes it as it comes. We must just get we're just close up onto these cars. Here's Jimmy Clark coming into the braking area. Graham Hill, I think the car behind him is Courage. While we were in the pits, it looks like something has happened to the Ferrari, because I'm sure that looks like Courage. We'll just get a close-up on it. Yes, it's Courage. It's in 3rd place. It looks like Amon is retired somewhere. There's Jim Clark once again braking the street corner. Amon has dropped back to 4th place. He's getting waved on by a slower car. Through he goes. There's the blue flag being waved quite vigorously to the slower cars, but they know that he's there. The placings we got him now as at lap 32 is that Jim Clark is leading from Graham Hill. 3rd place is Piers Courage. 4th is Chris Amon, who's obviously come to grief a little bit there. Then we've got Denny Holm and Frank Gardner. That's the way they are with lap 32. There's 13 laps to go in the Warwick Farm International 100. Round they swing now, and it's the leader Jimmy Clark going over the causeway. Hill going through now. He's the 3rd car there, and he's diving on the inside of the slower car, and going with him is Courage. Piers Courage. See the McLaren, the size of it, a little bit smaller in the wheelbase and very much slimmer, lighter car, about 200 pounds or more lighter than the 2.5 litre car. And Courage applying the pressure now.
Jack Brabham too. Frank Gardner has pulled out of the race, and Brabham has moved ahead of Rodriguez. So Brabham now is in 6th place, almost a lap behind Jim Clark.
There's the McLaren Cosworth Ford driver, Piers Courage, setting up nicely for the run into the main straight, into the pit straight. And here he is, the tail just moving slightly. Very nice exit that time. No pressure on him in 3rd place.
As they came through, Bill, I saw that Jim Clark's lead has been reduced, whether he's taking it easy in these last 4 or 5 laps, but Graham Hill would be no more than 75 yards behind him. So let's look at the margin. That's for, we see Chris Amon, who's in 4th place, but the interest is in the leader now, because Jim Clark is not so far ahead of Graham Hill and Piers Courage with only 4 laps to go. Now that's Graham Hill. Now let's see where Jim Clark is. He's around there somewhere in the S's, but he wouldn't be any more than about 75 yards in front. And let's see who we see now. Yes, this should be car number 6, is it? No, 5 that is. We're still looking for the leader. Car 5 is running in 2nd place. And there's the leader in front, is it? Now let's watch for the two of them. Now here's this margin. Is there something wrong with Clark's car? Is he going as fast as he was? Because Graham Hill's moving right up on top of him. Is this the drama of the race, or is that a slower car? That must be a slower one.
Going through there.
But somewhere we have Graham Hill.
One of the 1.5s. There's Graham Hill going through. But I tell you what, there's somebody
Here's Jim
there.
Clark
it's
now.
Pulling over. It's Glyn Scott getting out of the way for Jimmy Clark. So Clark is still holding on to his 6-second lead over his teammate Graham Hill. who's around about, I think, a couple of seconds only in front of Piers Courage. We'll look for them now as they come through. The Courage seems to have dropped back a little bit at this stage. There's Hill, and there's no sign of Courage. We'll just wait for them now. There goes. That's Courage going through there. He's still at 4 or 5 seconds in arrears. Now you'll see them go out of the crossing, and then we look now, they come into the main straight, and Amon was just coming through into the straight as Clark was going out before. So there he comes, swooping in at the top of the screen. This will be Jimmy Clark going through, the time running out fairly rapidly now. Nursing it out very nicely, watching all the track, concentrating at a very, very high level now. Still clipping through the edges. The pressure's definitely on now after about 42 laps completed. The race running out rapidly, and it's still Jimmy Clark who led right from the flag drop. But you don't know until the checkered flag goes down.
What a race, Bill. We saw then the first 3 cars all in the Hume Straight together, which is only a mile or so long. After 42 laps, would you see 3 drivers that close together?
Yes, I think the most interesting part is now is can Courage, is he quite content to sit in 3rd place? I think he is at this stage. He'd have to be really having a go not to, because this is obviously where he's going to finish if he can keep it on the road. And can Chris Amon make up the ground? But I don't think it is. It's a monumental task for the Ferrari driver, because here comes the other car coming through into view now. There goes Hill. So Courage is obviously just sitting back in 3rd place, keeping a very watchful eye on the Ferrari, which might be possibly coming through now. Now, Ezzy Tall closing up the gap on Courage. This we'll have to sort out for you. And here's Amon. Just have a look at this. This is getting interesting. There's Courage coming through into view now. Yes, it's Amon there with a slower car in front of him. He'll look forward to try and get past it. He's going to get it possibly on acceleration out of creek. Seems a little, just taking it a little easy at the stage. There he goes on acceleration through into the right-hander. Clipping through, and he'll come out now for the left-hand corner, cutting across the apex. So what we'll try and do is get a time difference on him and Piers Courage at this stage.
And by our lap chart, Bill, we only have 1 lap to go, so Jim Clark is on the last circuit of the course. We'll just check that. It's sometimes difficult to count through 45 laps. We say that Jim Clark is on the last circuit. He should be receiving the checkered flag after 1 more lap. Of course, if he stays out there in front. Graham Hill is running 2nd. And there's Clark going round on what should be the last circuit. And yes, there's the gun going up. So what happened? That went a bit too early, I'd say. That should go off when the race is over. I'm looking down for the clerk of the course here with the checkered flag. But Clark is coming down the straight, which should be the last time in this race. He's led from last to finish. Jim Clark, Flying Scott, coming down here. And he's been in front all the way. It's been a mighty performance by him. He recorded 1:27.4 in practice. We'll get some times for him, and it should be that he'll be the new lap record holder here at Warwick Farm. He's already run this race 2 times, in 1965 and in 1966. In 1965, he averaged 86.44 miles an hour for his fastest lap of 1:33.7. and 85.44 miles an hour for the whole race. In 1966, he did the fastest lap, 1:34, average 86.17, and for the 45 laps, he also averaged 85.44. So his time in 1955 and 1966 was exactly the same. So it would not surprise if Jim Clark, after a faultless exhibition right through this race, has done an even faster time. The fastest time ever for the 45 laps is 69 minutes and 17.3 seconds. And here he is, Jim Clark, number 6, the Flying Scot, coming down to complete this race and receive the checkered flag. And there it is, the Tasman International Series race is over. 2nd placing would go to car 5, Graham Hill. 3rd placing to car number 18, Piers Courage. 4th placing should be number 4, Chris Amon, and 5th placing should be number 5, Denny Halm. Unofficial margins between car 6 and car 5, 5.5 seconds, and then 4.5 seconds to car number 18 in third place. First 5 cars are across the line. They are 6, 5, 18, 4 and 1. 6, 5, 18, 4 and 1. Car number 6, Jim Clark of Great Britain. Jim Clark was driving the Lotus 49 Ford V8. Second placing to his teammate Graham Hill in car number 5, also a Lotus 49 Ford V8. In third place was car 18, only 1600 cc's, driven by Piers Courage, United Kingdom, the McLaren Ford Cosworth FVA. In fifth place was car number 4, Chris Amon of New Zealand, the Dino Ferrari V6. And in fifth place rather, was Denny Hulme of New Zealand, the Repco Brabham Ford FVA. So going through those once more, first placing to Jim Clark, car 6, that's the Lotus 49 Ford V8. Second, car 5, Graham Hill, Lotus 49 Ford V8. Third, car 18, Piers Courage, the McLaren Ford Cosworth FVA. Fourth place, Chris Amon, New Zealand, the Dino Ferrari V6, car number 4. And in fifth place, car number 1, Denny Hulme, New Zealand, the Repco Brabham Ford FVA. Now the winner, Jim Clark, has just completed his lap of honour, waving to all the course marshals and the officials out there. A huge crowd gathering down in front of the pits here to welcome the winner for the third time of the Tasman International Race, Jim Clark creating history on the Warwick Farm circuit. And without doubt, this would be the fastest race ever held since the inception of these races in 1961. And the thousands are gathering round to welcome one of the greatest motor racing drivers of all time. He this year equalled Juan Fangio's record, or was it last year, of the greatest number of Grand Prix ever won by a single driver, up around the 25 mark. A calm driver, perfect in technique, and he controlled his speed and his car right throughout this course. And behind him, Graham Hill, who did a great job putting on a real exhibition of team driving. His job was to allow Clark to stay out there in front and hold on to that second place, which he did right throughout the race. In third placing, Piers Courage. Well, that's a great performance by Courage. The Lotus 49 Ford V8s of Hill and Clark have the capacity of 2495 cc's, 2495. Piers Courage is driving a much smaller car, only 1600 cc's, so he's giving something like 900 cc's away in power to the other cars. But what a great exhibition he did to keep up with them all the way, and in fact challenge Graham Hill for many, many laps and finish in third place. The hard luck story, as there always are in these races, was Jack Brabham, who was making a great start after being back in 10th place on the grid. Jack put a new engine in his car, was up at the Oran Park circuit this morning trying to get the car moving properly. He moved from 10th place up to 5th at one stage in the race, and then was forced to pull into the pits for a 100-second pit stop, and that put him right back in 10th place. He pulled up to finish in about 6th or 7th place. Chris Amon was going particularly well right through the race, and then suddenly, with about 10 laps to go, he fell back and finally came again to finish in 4th place. Now it means now that Chris Amon has lost the lead in the Tasman International Series. Before this race he had 27 points to Jim Clark's 24. Clark gets 9 points for running first, so he goes to 33, and for running 4th, Amon gets only 3. So it's Clark 33, Amon 30, with only one race to go.
Clark went on to win the Australian Grand Prix at Sandown, which was destined to be his last title. Jim Clark was tragically killed in an F2 race in Germany 6 weeks later. Sadly, over the next few years, the same fate befell Piers Courage, Pedro Rodriguez and Graham Hill. In 1970, the Tasman Cup turned to F5000 regulations, and Frank Matic